Hello, my name is Mr. Wall. You can call me Mr. Wall. I'm not yet an official teacher, but I caught uses conscious of tactically juxtaposed natures of organized crime, and note that's no theory. They've been attaching kids and their families to fake words with themselves and with others, fake ties to complete strangers, on and off the schools too, to make it look real. Where and how it used remotely fake and identities of integrity with jobs A through Z and with titles A through Z, black pupils. Here! Or you can call me Rami. Your science. Call yourself that. Excuse me. So, anyway, my neighbors passed, and with ones that are still, I don't know where they're living, associated. They got involved with untimely deaths at Trinity College, with names associated with them also next to schools intercities. And they have roles at the time with untimely deaths and shootings with names associated with them. And wire crime acts and falsified police reports roles with them. They have roles with the intelligence community, even as high as up as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with other the differences of that and of other agencies' involvements with it is also discernible black pupils. And with this hyperscope. So, in other words, Weathersfield police confessed the name Cololo and Sullivan involved with them with wire crimes with the McGee's. They have a bunch of people with the name McGee involved also with families on campuses that came through Central Connecticut State University and other campuses tied to them who have roles leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since with the names that use them for predicate acts. This is also where they attach everyone to fake words and lie about how and why we're using their names. They have been forbidding me and others' writings because these are also people who use remotely criminally foreign influence, narratives and natures and regarding motives for their uses of words and values like privacy. As the online companies and as the agencies and courts involved with federal evidences crimes with them, involved with criminally foreign influence readings of precedents in those statutes, and as collusions with countries A through Z, and with all exceptions. Forgiveness is not to leave out the breaching method that keeps this the outcome. It's recorded too. Ugh. So 100 people, a bunch of people with the military have roles with prosecutors and judges and their family members. Also with uses of the differences of kids' motivations, acting at locations tied to acting at campuses, and the difference of who is responsible. Because this is where and how they use remotely all human differences, beginning with Native Americans' difference and beginning with the difference of indigenous being native. Because there is one identity of hyper simultaneous. That is a system by where and how. The second something is a system other than its own, it demonstrates it. That's why and how not just America has indigenous population that nature is showing, using to show that suits and ties, counters to them, and exceptions are still collusions, blaming other things, others, and ourselves. For example, where the answer is a breaching method, like what caused slavery, a human fact human nature breaching method, predicate acts with facts method through the selves of modern names, of colonial names too. First, before our families were born, that's why it was entrenched. there was no unity. They had to force one by counter extorting 13 people and people tied to them at 13 locations for a short amount of time. The laws were so crazy against everyone at the time. They had no chance but to defend themselves by thanking our founders for the unity, even though it was a fake unity. And that's why and how slavery was not only entrenched, sickly distinctly, but to use functionally how sickly non distinctly it was and is left out, or that body is discerned. Even if that body is a majority of people, even if that body is a majority of countries. This preaching method from some ancient times, before religious messengers were even born, it had already forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded excuse me, people in defenses of themselves, whatever, regardless, to use and to defend their uses of, blaming other things, others, or selves for what the breaching method caused. And then defending that using the science's names more and more. Tactical ulterior from how nature's identity has employed the uses of them. How this is left out too, how with treatment of the environment, how could they leave out how that slavery, torture, extortion method, and how it designed everything to pretend others too or be sensed. Now, before our founders were born, how there's pollution on the rivers, it was more so setting up what was built as New York City before the people that were even born that built it, relative to what the suburbs were designed for and how they were designed. It's not by accident. Before our founders were born, the suburbs were designed, and that's exactly what the suburbs look like in Russia. Designed to cause negative value nature progressions, accidents, people reliant upon, not just because they're reliant upon stuff from other locations, but tactical ulterior. There's proof that there used to be migration, just like the Canadian geese, birds, migratory. We're not using nature's answers, but we're not being allowed to. People are speaking like free speech is. Interbranch is still forging and switching names. Mashing is a kick. I'm doing it with my thumb. Just pushing the thing with my skin of my tip of my thumb. Okay, ready? So a police chief Cintron and 1 years ago was involved with the same house slash yes. They're hiding behind the rules with the military also with drugs and medicines crimes with a whole bunch of different countries and with foreign ones too. And with the military foreign too, the difference between intelligence and three interbranch locations. Lawyers too, readings of statutes, foreign and domestic, involve Russian families and American with the lawyers of Weathersfield Police and of the FBI involved with the corner of the Elm Street on Rocky Hill in Weathersfield, increasingly with people on all sides of on Covington Street in New Britain, next to Central Connecticut State University, as people and people tied to them increasingly involved planting evidences and behavior racketeering worse than war crimes with names next to the campuses in Hartford, like Trinity College and the little kids' campuses next to it and houses next to it and businesses next to it that have had my name used with them. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, planting evidence is there. These are people next to Harvard hospitals. Increasing people at have been planting evidences at other campuses. I believe it was before George Bush or Barack Obama's presidency. They had reports on how different things about schools. This person lied to get into a campus, and they're making it, and they're punishing people. People involved with that, a whole bunch of judges' families have roles of people like, and they act with conjunctions and adjacents to the state judicial branch offices and to the state corrections offices as names involved with wire crime acts and methods and a whole bunch of distinct natures of organized crime and conscious uses of that through time, not legitimate roles as their roles with distinctly with the departments in the business office at Central Connecticut State University, as people along Church Street in Old Weathersfield, who also are involved with the names of my street with the Weathersfield Police. Criminally form influence backstream nature, quality aspects, natures with other police forms. Whiting forensics for a kid when I was a little kid, as a young man. And then again, and still, they have roles planting evidences with patients and criminals and relative cases and people associated with those crime spots, body dumping spots. They have roles with the principal child abuser forcing that. Their roles with Sandy Hook names, further ones tied to Adam Lanza, with the courts and on all the state judicial branch offices. Weathersfield Pizza has people with the name Stocko. There's a Maria, I believe her name is Ria Stocco. I think maiden name is reportedly Maria Vazino. I don't know her brother's name. There's a Jonathan Mayano who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed after my class graduated. I had to stay back too. The reason I stayed back too was so they could lie regarding this. These are people from Washington, D.C. and New York City and interstates like Vermont, involved with two speech class teachers I had in high school and other teachers I had, but involved with two cooking classes too, as people involved with drugs and medicines crimes against kids and attaching them to remote uses of investigations, investigators of all ages and of all natures. These are people involved with investigations of that too in their campuses involvement. And forgiveness is also because they're pretending stuff is personal because they're hiding what came first, which is also increasingly bad. Nature communicates to us by a method of showing us the value of our questions or the questions of others, or if the value of what came first is valued or not, to show. And truths can be used for lies or to screen lies that can be discerned. And nature shows honesty, integrity of observation shows that emotions serve a function to show description of a person's emotions or of others' emotions. If the description is to leave out finite details or simultaneous details or identity volume science details, like, for example, the breaching method. The human factor nature breaching method is um, an answer that is increasingly being and having been replaced by those obligated not to have that replaced. See, but we have roles with readings of statutes, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, as collusions with where and how used remotely, our names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the difference of their collusions or the interbranch or the intelligence, like the people with the prisons. Increasingly, people on and off the state of Connecticut corrections offices in Hartford, Connecticut, they have roles with names next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, who have roles with a whole bunch of different countries, like with the uses of phrases like criminal justice and like mental health and like reason and like identity. They have the debate on pronouns used to measure and maintain you guys' self value roles with abuses of your children and pretending it's for reasons other than it actually was since founding. Sickly distinctly against Native Americans, that means sickly distinctly against the sciences, everyone's name. Because anything against the hyper native, that's what nature shows us to be, to avoid. See, but then an hyper archetypal criminal enterprise came about, forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the people of the human species body to defend their names and the individuals who would speak for those names we are as groups like countries. Wrong. Not just wrong. Tactical ulterior from how nature employed our names A through Z, our difference slash S. Individual, group difference slash S, and species volumes three ways. And we are being shown simultaneously there are other species the same way. These are three different volume sizes, distinct, and with the description of it that accounts for all of it at once is its identity relation to itself, and the only increasing value of it. But it's also how it's distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously present slash hyper simultaneously. This is what we discern when we discern where and how. There's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous, greater than more finite than an active relativity to it. And then as its way it is, each subject we can bring up or use for a program per se, individually, grouped, and together simultaneously. Still, everything has slash s. More plurality coming into reality because of how its body makes more of itself. The identity of forever nature, that nature itself revealed English and the other sciences to teach. Before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, people hadn't couldn't fathom we would forget or lose track of how nature is increasingly demonstrating how to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures and means out of nowhere. As long as we try to make sure that those positives are not criminally foreign influenced, hyper criminally foreign influenced. Long hyper criminally foreign influence. But wherever there was criminally criminal foreign influences, this was propagated more so by this breaching method than anything. It has their difference, and it has them. It showed them how to group criminal enterprises tactically wrong, how to counter locations and instances, descriptions, and names descriptions tactically wrong to screen so way worse the breaching method involved. For example, with the narratives and natures regarding the attack on the Capitol and the distinction and the distinct way they dealt with the distinct roles and natures of people there had, and how they're speaking about their own motivations, leaving out all the ways. They can't defend those takes on law and afford discern. The obligations that our founders communicated to us to demonstrate at all locations, and then further at Washington, and other ways at Washington, and then further at our locations simultaneously, distinctly, non distinctly, have something for nature has, which nature is actually demonstrating. But those demonstrations, the breaching method assigned, employed, blamed on other things, others ourselves. Where and how it was sustaining the fact, treating nature, slavery, torture, extortion of everyone sickly, distinctly method slash S, but the S part, the plural part, through all the different hyper additional names. And then through already individually grouped in together. That's how the suits and ties, the counters and their foundations, had roles with sick things before our founders were born, north and south, sickly distinctly, but also sickly now distinctly.